Right, gosh, the sun is shining. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this lunchtime event. This week is Mental Health Awareness Week. So if I hadn't said it enough so far, here it is. So yes, thanks for taking the time to join us for this. It's one of the series of events that we've put on at Team London Bridge for this week to help businesses look into tools and resources and anything that's out there available with the idea of well-being in the workplace. This year's theme is anxiety, but by far I'm no expert in this, so that's something that Kelly will cover for us. Just to put it in context, Kelly, who will take us through today's session, she's the Social Impact Director at Psychosynthesis Trust. They are based just here in London Bridge, as most of you are, I would hope. And yes, we're delighted to have partnered with them for this event and yeah, continue that relationship. There's a lot of good stuff happening out there, so I'd recommend checking them out. But that's it from me. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Kelly, and I'll be doing the admin in the background. So I might jump in if there's anything coming up from the chat or yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. And thank you, everyone, as Sophia says, for taking some time out today to invest in yourself. It's very important, right? And thank you for those of you messing. If you haven't got a camera on your PC, don't worry. It's just lovely to see the faces of who's joining us today. And while we've still got some more people just in the waiting room, just a bit of housekeeping before we start. You would have noted that when you registered that we're recording this session. So that allows you to just relax a little bit and know that you don't need to take all the notes and note all the research. It's going to be sent to you from Sophia after this event if you agreed for us to send you that. But the sessions where we do breakout rooms or the chat feature, for confidentiality reasons, that will not be recorded. So, feel that it's just the main room sessions that will be recorded and sent to you. And I'd love for this session to be as interactive as possible, right? Some of you, I know this will be a working lunch for you, so you might be getting that dip if you're having that high glycemic lunch. So I would love to keep your cameras on if you can, and also for you to be responding to me. I'd love this to be a two-way conversation. So using the chat feature in Zoom and just putting your answers to some of the questions or making some notes there. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end for any Q&As that you have. But let's just test that chat feature for some of you who might be Teams people and not Zoom people. If you just click to the bottom row, you'll find some icons, and one of them would be the chat feature. So if you could just prove to me that you can use that, just type in there for me where you work and where you're based, just so that we can get a feel for what organisations and where we're representing in the UK, or potentially maybe outside the UK today. So just show me that your chat feature's working, and then I can see, or Sophia and I can see that when you type that in the comments. And let me know if you've got any problems. And I'm just going to caveat here that I have 3 screens. So I'm going to do my best to look at you, but I've got you over here, my notes over here, the chat feature. So brilliant. New Cross Gate, Margate, Southwark, London Bridge. Obviously, we expect a lot of you to be local. So it's lovely for you to see who else is in the room as well and who's represented today. So as Sophia mentioned, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, probably the busiest week for people that work in mental health. And today, we're specifically looking at what corporates can do to be proactive, to create an environment that's supportive to those of your workforce that are experiencing anxiety. And we'll explain to you really the quite shocking stats of how many that would be of your current employees. And in this session, I'd love to share with you some real practical resources. I want you to have this as an investment of your time, that you get some practical things that you can do straight away from spending an hour with us. And have some direct experience of nature, because that's one of the unique selling points and the lens that we're looking through today, how community and nature can help reduce anxiety. And there's going to be some time for you to have some space with other businesses to just share some good practice and learn from each other. Because, as I say, we don't have all the answers, but it's great for you to share what's working in your organization. So let's kick it off with, why are we talking about anxiety? Why is it the theme for this year's mental health awareness? And what are some of the impacts and the effects that it can be having? So firstly, what I want to do is familiarize you with some of the terms, some of the different types of anxiety that you'll see here on the right-hand side of the screen. There's generalized, social, climate, health, high functioning. And some of these, you might not have ever heard of these terms before. So it's really good, especially if you're an employer, to familiarize yourself, but also to understand the triggers, the symptoms, and the effects that these different types of anxieties can have. I'm going to give you a one-line overview of them, but if you want to learn more, then please do contact me or just do some research online. So generalized anxiety is when someone is experiencing regular, uncontrollable worries on various different topics and things in their everyday life. And it can include panic attacks as well. So that's something that sometimes people associate with anxiety. Social anxiety is when someone experiences anxiety in social settings. And we find that normally would be in new environments for people, or where strangers are, they don't know the people in that environment, or large crowds. Climate anxiety is when people are worrying about the planet, extinction of species, and the living conditions that are being affected by climate change. And then you've got health anxiety, which is the fear of contracting an illness, or sometimes people call it scan anxiety if they're waiting for test results or scans, if you've got a current illness. And it's really important to note that those last two ones that I spoke about, climate anxiety and health anxiety, these have spiked recently. Well, obviously, people being worried about getting COVID, that's been a big impact. And then the effects of having COVID afterwards. I know some of you who completed that survey beforehand, having long COVID is actually one of the triggering symptoms for many of you for some of your anxiety. But climate crisis as well. There was a study done at Bath University that found that 25% of staff in the UK are experiencing climate anxiety. So even though they're not working in that industry, that's still in the back of their mind, of that sometimes quite a hopelessness state of mind of, what can I do? How can I make an impact? So these are some of the stats and some of what's going on in the Workplace Health Report, just to really show you that this isn't something that's just a flash in the pan that only a few people are experiencing. 60% of employees are currently experiencing some form of anxiety. And that's why we're very grateful for it being the theme for this year, and for people like Team London Bridge to be helping raise awareness and reducing the stigma around it. One of the ones that I didn't mention there is something called high functioning anxiety. And that's when most people go, what's that? I've never heard of that before. And in corporations, it's probably one of the biggest forms of anxiety. So if I show you here, sometimes people are very identified with what it looks like on the outside. Your employee might even praise you for some of these, how high functioning anxiety looks. And if you can relate to any of the words in this column, you might even feel quite proud of what it looks like on the outside. But the question I want you to think about is, what's this behavior actually costing you? Because this is what it's like on the inside to meet those standards of being a high performance employee. Because a high level employee who sets themselves these standards makes themselves appear to be very competent. And what happens to a competent person? You get given more things to do. So therefore, you're very responsible, you get things done, and this burden starts to really build up. And what often happens is there's a breaking point where people burn out, or people just have a breakdown of some kind because of this internal impact and pressure that they're carrying. So just check in with yourself at the moment on how you're currently appearing on the outside to other people, and just notice what that might be costing you from a mental health internal perspective. Just looking at some of your questions here. Thank you. Okay. So, anxiety isn't always obvious. And that's why the research that we do at the Psychosynthesis Trust, we're much more interested in looking at symptoms of anxiety rather than just focusing on labels. And I want to illustrate this by a little exercise. I want you to take a look on the screen at some of these symptoms. Consider, have you experienced any of these over the last month? Do you know what caused them, what the trigger was? And did you ever relate them to the term of being anxious or experiencing anxiety? So there are 18 different symptoms here. Obviously, they're not all 100% associated with anxiety. They could have other causes. But I just want you to have a count of how many of you experienced over the last month. And if you can, just in the chat, just type the number. I don't need to know which ones, but I'd be very interested just to see who's in the room today and how many of these you've experienced over the last month. Just type the number in the chat for me. Three, 8, 3, 11, 4, 5 or 6, or all, yes, sometimes they come and go. A real variety. Great. Keep sharing. It'll be really lovely. And if you want to, just keep on reviewing back on this chat for your own reference. Because anxiety is really an unspoken epidemic. There's 6 in 100 people diagnosed currently in the UK. And that dramatically affects our community and our economy. From an employee point of view, there are 822,000 workers that are nationally affected by work-related anxiety every year. And so it's costing UK businesses up to £8 billion a year, and 17 million working days are being lost. So this is why we need to take this really seriously. You took a survey, thank you very much, when you joined this, because we wanted to also learn a little bit about what's going in the local area. And so 100 people have been surveyed in local to Southwark, and 95% of people who took that survey said that they were experiencing some symptoms of anxiety, but they weren't linking it to the label of anxiety. Shockingly high numbers there, just from that pool of 100 local people. And that's why anxiety is really being classed as this silent pandemic. It's a really interesting point to note as well, that anxiety can be positive as well as negative. And really it's our understanding and relationship with it that's the important thing. So you might have used anxiety as a motivational tool before to get momentum or energy to, revise for something or prepare for a presentation that's coming up. And it can act as also an indication on how much you care about the end result of something. So it's a nice checking point. And there is a great book called Future Tense, if you're interested in this, that explores how anxiety can actually be good for you. And if you're interested, that's going to be in the resources section that we'll send you after this workshop. But the problem occurs when the symptoms of anxiety become the focus, right? And they create negative behavior changes. which often feel completely out of control. So things like we mentioned before, panic attacks or insomnia. Now, anxiety is very linked to our body systems. I want you to think back to a time that you felt either excited or nervous, and think about how that feels in your body. Those two things have different outcomes, but the sensations and the feeling, there's a very fine line between what it feels like to feel excited or to feel nervous. And due to this lack of understanding of anxiety, people often are taking medication or using cognitive behavioral techniques to just manage or sometimes mask these symptoms of anxiety, rather than focusing on the cause. And that's why we're really encouraging people to learn how to disidentify with anxiety. Now, that might be a completely new term for you, so I'm going to explain it a little bit more, because it means that you can have more control over your anxiety. And it involves creating a space and choice between you and your anxiety through this process called disidentification, which is a psychosynthetic term. And I'm going to read a quote from our founder, Asa Jolie, about what it is. We are dominated by everything with which our self is identified. We can dominate and control everything from which we disidentify ourselves. The normal mistake we all make is to identify ourselves with some content of our consciousness rather than our consciousness itself. Some people get their identity from feelings, others from their thoughts, others from their social roles. But this identification with a part of the personality destroys the freedom which comes from the experience of the pure. So disidentification is this process of understanding that you are more than your body, more than your mind, more than your feelings, more than your anxiety. And creating this space between you and your symptoms really helps you navigate them. So what I'd love to gift you all today is our Exploring Anxiety Toolkit, because this contains resources, signposting exercises to help you develop this space between you and your symptoms and to help you manage your anxiety. So Sophia will be sending you out a digital copy of this after the workshop for those who consented when you registered. And it's a term that I just want you to hold for this whole process that we're going through today. Now, an additional angle that we're focusing on in today's workshop, which has been highly researched to improve anxiety, is involving both nature and community. So let's take a quick look at some of the scientific benefits of nature.
Walk into a forest, and within 5 minutes, your body and brain start to change. Your heart rate slows. Your facial muscles start to relax. Your hard-working frontal lobes begin to quiet down. And this will boost your productivity and creativity later in the day. I'm Florence Williams, and I've spent the last couple of years writing a book about how being in nature actually makes us more human. Here are some of the things I've learned from the new science looking at nature and our health. The smell of pine trees strengthens your immune system. When you hear birdsong or look at fractal patterns in nature, your brain puts out more alpha waves, making you feel both calm and alert. If you spend an hour and a half walking around living plants and animals, you'll be less preoccupied by your personal problems and feel more connected to people and the world around you. Finnish researchers say being in nature a minimum of 5 hours a month can make you happier overall. Why not give it a try? Go outside, go often, bring friends, breathe.
Right. right? Some little bits, I always like to share some of the scientific research behind this as well as the direct experience. But what I'd like to do right now is explore something you might not have been familiar with, and it's something called a guided visualization or meditation. I want it to focus around your typical day to try and sense check about how much time are you currently spending in nature. So a guided visualization is where you close your eyes and listen to my voice and just concentrate on what appears in your mind's eye. And we're just going to do this for a couple of minutes. So please close your eyes. And if you don't feel comfortable in closing your eyes, that's fine. You can just lower your gaze or soften your gaze. And while you do this, put a hand on your stomach. Doesn't matter which one, left or right. And just take in 3 deep breaths. And when you do this, you should feel your stomach expanding like a balloon as you breathe in. Imagine that it's the morning and that you've just woken up. What's the first thing that you think of? Or what's the first thing that you do when you wake up? You might be deciding what to wear today. How are you testing the temperature or checking the weather to decide what clothes to wear today? Now have a think about your breakfast. Some of you, this might be a quick cup of coffee, or you might sit down and eat some food. Where would you sit to have this? Take a look around where you're sitting. Can you see any nature? It's now time to travel to work. How will you get there? Maybe you take public transport to work. You walk, cycle, drive, or maybe work is just walking to the study in your home because you're working from home today. Do you notice much nature on that journey? Maybe you drove past a forest. Or maybe the only nature you got was seeing a pigeon at the train station. So you've been at work now for a few hours and it's time for lunch. Where would you normally have this? Where would you normally eat your lunch when you're at work? And while you're thinking of this, just consider how much time you give to switching off from work and concentrating on your needs throughout the day. Might be worthwhile also considering how much fresh air you get when you're at work. Do you take breaks to move or to go outside? So it's getting close to the end of the working day. How do you mark this? How do you mark this shift of pace and mindset at the end of the day? Do you use time in nature to mark this? Maybe sitting on a bench whilst walking through the park on the way home, or taking the dog for a walk when you get home. or it could simply be having a cup of tea in your garden when you get home. So gently, when you feel ready, open your eyes, a stretch, a yawn, shake your hands, just whatever will bring you back. And while you're coming back, I just want you to think back on that day and consider, how much time do you think you spent in nature collectively? Do you think this increases over the weekend? Do you spend more time outside at the weekend? I know I've seen that many changes with COVID, that people that used to walk to work now they work from home, that they're missing those glimpses of nature because they don't really have that far to walk anymore. So lots of people's lifestyles have changed. And I'm really interested to know for yourselves, you know, what the estimated figure you think for a whole week. So you just had an example of a day. Think about how much time you spend at the weekend. If you had to add up the amount of time that you spent in nature for a whole week, what would that number be? If you can just type that in the chat for me. What's the average amount of time you spend in nature for a whole week? If you didn't have a dog, it would be minutes. My dog is a blessing in so many ways, but I completely agree, Penny. I definitely get my at least 45 minutes twice a day because of him. No worries, Mallory, that's great. Watch the recording. And also when you're writing this number in the chat, just note for yourself whether you'd like to change it, whether you'd like to increase or decrease it. And if you want to increase it, have you got any ideas on how? 30 minutes, 15 hours, 10 to 20 hours, 2 hours, 4 hours, real variety there. And I really do think it depends on where you live, your working environment and the travel. So yeah, I'd like to increase it. Okay, let's focus on that. So employers, are looking at ways that they can include nature in operations because they've really understood the importance of it. And these are just a couple of simple suggestions that you can make either at work or at home that make these tiny little bits that just make a big impact. Because the European Centre for Environment and Human Health, which is done with the University of Exeter, found that spending just 2 hours a week in green spaces significantly improves your mental and your physical health. And that is, it's the importance of presence, I think, has something else to do with it. So it's not just rushing through the park to get to work. It's choosing to have your lunch outside on that park bench without any devices. All these things are going to really increase the benefits for you when your presence in nature is still and you're conscious about it. And that's why with our Exploring Anxiety programs that we run at the Psychosynthesis Trust, we meet for 2 hours every week in nature, experimenting with relaxation techniques and discussing our experiences of anxiety in that safe group. But we do it in nature because you're getting those 2 hours, even if you did nothing else, you're getting the benefit of being in nature for those 2 hours every week, for 10 weeks at least. Really interesting part here, for those of you who might be nature deprived, that there's real emerging research that even watching nature programs can have a similar effect as actually being in nature. I don't need any more reasons to watch David Attenborough, but if I needed to, this is good research. So again, I want to do another experiment with you. I'd love to see what effects this has on you when you experience nature virtually. I'm going to transport you to an ancient forest in the UK. And while you watch this short clip, I'd love you to focus or notice on these 3 things. What are the sensations, physical sensations that you feel in your body? Do you have any emotions that come up when you're watching this? And just recognize if your mind starts to drift. Let's transport you. So, still in your current state, just stay there and just notice whether you were still or fidgety whilst watching that, whether your muscles tightened or whether you relaxed back into your chair a little bit more, whether your mind was clear or full of thoughts, and whether you felt calm or frustrated. There's no judgment at all. It's just the space for you to notice the effects of that tiny experiment. And because it's an experiment, I would love to know whether you felt more calm or more relaxed, you know, in more calm or tenser whilst watching that. So just type in the comments about how you felt. Your breathing slowed. Okay, yeah, most people remember going back to that scientific video that we watched at the beginning, what birdsong does to your brain, that your heart starts to slow down, your muscles start to relax, calm and relaxed, breathing slow. Yep, typical. So interesting. Keep them coming while we're talking, because I love experiments, because some people might just go, oh, that running water made me want to go to the toilet and I couldn't relax after I heard that. So I want to hear all scenarios. While we do that, talking about the Exploring Anxiety pilot program that we ran last year, it became really evidential. Something was really, I didn't expect this when we put the program together, but one of the biggest outcomes was that people felt that sharing their experience of anxiety really reduced their anxiety, their experience of anxiety, and the stigma that was that, oh, I'm not the only person that's experiencing this. You all experience it. that in itself just helps so many people. But creating this sense of community and belonging had such an impact on our participants. And it was really interesting reading the study from Mindful Path that states that organizations that want to improve their wellness at work, so if that's something that you're focusing on, you could focus on belonging, support, and purpose. They were the 3 key areas to create community, but this wellness at work within their culture. And so you just put some of these prompts on the screen for you to think about your own organization, and maybe you could focus on these if you want to improve the wellness at work and this sense of community. And obviously we're all very sure, I'm very familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but see, these are some of the things that you can be thinking about that can be implemented within your organization. But I think it's also good for us to think about ourselves as individuals and the communities that we have been part of or we're currently part of already. So maybe it's you're part of a sports club. Maybe you play for a football team on a weekly basis. Maybe you're part of a religious group and you go to church regularly. Maybe you volunteer and you can, I don't know, do community gardening or help the homeless. Maybe you're part of support or health groups like parenting groups or walking groups. And maybe you're part of a club or association, some industry associations, or even being part of Team London Bridge and all the community activities that they do for local businesses. So think about the communities that you have been part of or that you're currently part of. Because I'm going to, well, not I, Sophia's going to assign you to a breakout room with 1 or 2 other people to share your thoughts. Now, I know this might be anxiety-inducing for some of you, talking to a complete stranger. It's only going to be for 5 minutes, and rest assured, I'm sure most people are feeling exactly the same. We're a very like-minded bunch here, and it's a very safe environment. So don't feel that you're alone. Again, the only one experiencing this. And you might want to write down these couple of questions because I can't copy them into your breakout rooms for you. But there's just 2 questions I want you to consider when you're sharing with this 1 or 2 other person in your breakout room. So thinking back, where are you or have you been part of a community? And how did that help with your mental health? So that's the first question. Where are you or have you been part of a community? And did it help at all with your mental health being part of that community? And if so, how? And then the second question is, what aspects of being part of that community could you bring back to your working environment? Or would you like to? And this is something to maybe discuss later with your organisation. How could we get this sense of whatever it might be that you did in that community that you think will be beneficial for your own environment in the workplace? So just have a jot down of that. We'll give you 5 minutes. I think Sophia's going to put you into breakout rooms, and the breakout room will tell you at the top when you've got a minute or so left. It will automatically bring you back to this main room if you've never used Zoom before. You can leave yourself. If you, by accident, click the leave the whole seminar button, don't worry, just come back in on the link that was in your email from Sophia and you'll come back into the main room. But you should, the breakout room should end after 5 minutes. And I think, Sophia, thanks for putting that in the chat for us as well. So if we're all good, you'll be with 1 or 2 other people and just have a chat, just have some sharing about community and its impact on your mental health.
Yes, I think that's everyone. I was just saying, and I'll send the link, I'll put it now in the chat. But one thing that we offer to everyone in and around London Bridge is some self-guided walks that you can do in your own time on different themes. So one is focused on public art that's available in the area. And again, there's a good connection between art and well-being and what that does to our brains and waves and everything. But a lot of those guided walks are focused on nature because we're very keen whenever we find a green place, whenever we find a place that can become green, we'll do that. So we're listing a lot of those. And also, as part of those self-guided walks, one of them involves a mini meditation. It's an audio piece that once you tune in, it's been specially commissioned for the two green spaces. One is just behind our office here, Gibbons Rent, and the other one is St. John's Churchyard, just by Pottersfields Park. So they invite you to connect with nature and listen to birdsong and all that. So yeah, basically everything that Kelly was saying, but in practice. So I'll send the link now.
Thank you. And please, if anyone wants to share anything from their breakout group, then please just take yourself off mute and put your hand up or type in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with. Thanks, Sophia. Brilliant. The link's in there if people want to copy that if you're a local person. It's interesting because the Exploring Anxiety programs that we run with corporates, and that's some of the feedback that we get, is that because we involve local third sector organisations to help the participants of the program actually gain experience in nature. So like, for example, we work with Bankside Open Spaces Trust, and people do community gardening for a day of one of the programs. And the wonderful thing that I hear from people is that they go, I've lived here all my life, and I never knew that Crossbones Gardens was just by Borough Market. And this is trying to join up people that are doing great things in local communities to give people that direct experience. So we have people that are working with local homeless charities or street wisdom walking, and all these things are part of the program so people get direct experience. But because they're working with local organisations, many of the participants continue to do these programs afterwards. And so that's increasing the volunteers in the borough because they're continuing to do community gardening on an ongoing basis with these organisations. And so we find that creating rhythm and routine, exploring various relaxation methodologies, gaining insight from direct experience, like we just spoke about, and insight from others, this sharing of what someone's experiencing, how they overcome this. It really empowers people to have agency and to support them with experiencing anxiety. This community sharing direct experience of nature and the psychosynthesis principles that they're understanding is this wonderful blend that doesn't need to have any therapeutic intervention. So these can be run with people in the local organisations who are good at facilitating, but you don't have to have the waiting list for medication or cognitive behavioural therapy. This is really good to give your employees or your own staff direct experience straight away. And the added benefit of joining this joined up working with this 10-week Exploring Anxiety programme is that when a corporation does this as an in-house programme, that funds a community programme to run for free. So it's pay it forward, right? Because we're working with local organisations. So for example, we're running a programme at Southwark College for disadvantaged youth. We're working with people with chronic illness, and we're working people with experiencing climate anxiety, because these three areas of deprived youth, chronic illness and climate anxiety seem to be the three areas where anxiety is increasing. And so we want to give back and run these programs for free. So corporations, we've seen the stats today of how it's important to support and have this culture which is supportive in corporations. But we're also joining you up with the local organisations that are in need, and also the third sector people that are providing some of the experiences with us. And the other thing is that we know that some of you here on the call are wellbeing officers or in HR. We also offer the opportunity for you to train, or anyone in the organisation to train for free as a facilitator. So once you've been through this programme, you can actually run Exploring Anxiety programs within your organisation without any need from us. We'll keep you on top with standards and quality assurance and additional training. But we want this program to be able to be far-reaching and really impactful. So there's going to be some information that is going to be sent out with Sophia along with the recording and stuff if you want to learn more about how you can access one of these programs, and also how you could maybe bring one in-house into your organization. And I think it's really, we've done quite a lot of work today. Sophia and I were just talking about this, about, you know, you as an individual, but you might actually be managing a team. And the toolkit, the Exploring Anxiety toolkit that we're going to send you after this, has a manifesto in there which can be shared with your organization about how they're showing up to work, how the culture of support is implemented, along with those practical tools that you could share or use individually or as a team. So this is a resource that I really want you to explore afterwards, have a read through. It's signposting you to apps. I mean, the things that are out there at the moment. There's one, I'll tell you the one. There's an app where if you're having a panic attack, you turn your phone up, open the app, and it will talk you through your panic attack. So it's there instantly to help support you. So these resources are invaluable for so many people to manage their anxiety. And I would like to sort of wrap this workshop up today with just reminding you, going back to that psychosynthesis concepts, that we are part of a bigger whole. And ourselves are made up of multiple parts that we can disidentify from. You are not your anxiety. And nature operates nature and community actually operate in a really similar way, because they only thrive when the ecosystem that they belong to is considered and engaged. So just hold that term of disidentification as you go throughout your day, and really notice what you're focusing on, what you're identifying with, what part of you, and then what it feels like to create some space between you and that. And if you'd like to connect to learn more about the programs that we're offering, like this Exploring Anxiety program, or to access some of the low-cost counselling that we have available at the Psychosynthesis Trust in Tooley Street, then my details will be sent out to you. I welcome lots of conversations. That's the way to really help and understand what you need. Please just drop me a line and we'll jump on a phone, or we'll grab a coffee in London Bridge. But before I close, I'd like to just make sure that, has anyone got any questions, any comments, any questions that you'd like to address before we close? I'm looking at multiple screens because I've got text over here, you're over here, trying to read your faces. Thumbs up if we're all good. We're all good? All good. Lovely. Well, thank you so much again, Sophia, for hosting us. If that's okay, Gabrielle. I hope you've got a lot of information from this, some food for thought, and you'll get your resources pack and this recording sent to you in an email from Sophia. Have a lovely day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kelly.